Thank you. Yesterday, my work day started off right about 4 o'clock in the morning. At about 4:30 in the morning, I had the first wave of a nice good running sweat come down and get me all nice and saturated. Right around that time, I was starting to run through numbers, run through temperatures, run through different processes on the batch that we were making. Shortly after that, I started the first accumulation of really nice gunked up hop resins right underneath all my fingernails. They're still there today. They'll probably still be there in the next couple of days as well. So if I shake your hand later on, that sticky film thing, it's just hops, don't worry about it. No need to worry. Shortly after that, I'm probably covered from at least head to shoulder in a nice grain powder. It's a really thin powder from where we crack our grain and makes you sneeze about every 4 minutes or so. And all the while I'm running those numbers through and I'm tossing bags that weigh 50 to 55 pounds, all in preparation for the next step that I got to do in the batch. All this is happening relatively before 6 o'clock in the morning. And all that while, all I'm thinking in my head, besides those numbers and besides which direction I need to turn my head in order to sneeze, all I can think is, God, I'm living the dream. And it's true. I live my dream every single day, 7 days a week, because my dream is craft beer. Now, it's funny, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's your dream job. It's more than a job to me. I don't even like to consider it a job. I like to consider it an actual physical embodiment of doing what I have had as a dream for years. You know, because when you're a kid and you dream, you're really dreaming of fantastic things. You dream of stuff that really doesn't make any sense at all and really can't happen, but you love it. And that's what gives kids that sparkle, that little extra bit of wonderment and whatnot that makes kids so lively and exciting and gives them the youth that we all wish we could reobtain. That wonderment comes with a blind hope and a blind faith that that dream and that fantasy can totally come true. They don't know, the kids don't know how they can do what they want to do. They just assume it's totally possible that when they're an adult, they'll be an astronaut, president of at least 20 countries, and probably be able to fly and see through walls. It makes sense to them. It's what they know. And as we grow up and we go through school and we have social interactions and our parents teach us not to go and try to fly off of things, we realize that the stuff that we held as a dream really can't be obtained. And it's a sad thing for a kid to lose that magic, but we tend to carry that with us. Our teachers, our parents, they hand us sample plates when we're growing up, and they say, these are the actual things that are great in life that you can achieve. And they tell you the pathways to get them. And what a lot of people tend to do is they replace that concept with dream with the concept of goal. I want to have this sort of life, I want to have this sort of job, or more or less this, and I need to follow A, B, C, D, and end up at Z, and then that's it. And that's a goal. It's not necessarily a dream. Very few people in the world naturally find one of those goals as actually truly a passion they had from a young childhood, and that's very fortunate for those, but it's very rare. It's important to have goals. I'm not talking badly about goals and whatnot. They are allowing us to accomplish most of our stuff day to day and also long term. But most people who can't identify a goal as a dream will keep a hold of dreams like I did when I was younger, but we throw it into fantasy land and we assume it can't be obtained. And since we know that that pathway to get to the dream doesn't exist, we tend to carry that with any future dreams when we get into adulthood. When I was in school, when I was in college, I did just that. I had dreams. I had lots of intuition and fantasies about how to interact with certain people in different spectacles of occupations and whatnot, but I just assumed it was all just, daydreaming, not really assuming that I could ever actually obtain it. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I liked science. I liked to interact with people. I wanted to do something that people enjoyed, or at least a service that would better their life. And therefore, I went into the medical industry. I got my degree in physiology, and I worked for the majority of my young life in the medical industry. And it's a great industry, and God knows it's a necessity, obviously. But it wasn't my passion. It was right before I graduated with my degree that I found my true passion. Now, I'm not advocating that teachers should tell their 9-year-old students that when you grow up, you can be a doctor or a lawyer or you can make hooch like mom and daddy drink. I'm not saying you should do that. There's a really good reason why they don't tell kids that in school. But, as you grow up, you see alcoholic beverages. They're around. They obviously have to get on the shelves somehow. They're going to be distributed. So there's an industry in it. So obviously, it wasn't like I discovered that beer exists all of a sudden in college, but kind of did. I found tucked in under the alcoholic production and distribution industry, an industry in itself that really was more of a community, more of a culture. And I became obsessed with it, and that culture was craft beer. And it was different than macro beer or in high industrial Super Bowl advertisement beer. This was beer that had a story. This was beer that had a purpose. And the diversity and the detail and the amount of history that went into craft beer blew my mind. As a kid, I loved anything with high details, lots of storylines, lots of character development, anything like that. And seeing a list that just went forever on a computer of all the different styles, and then you click on one style and you get an equally large list of all the different examples of it, I was like, this is going to be fun to explore this world a little bit further. And I delved into it. I started brewing my own beer, found out I was good at it. Never knew when I was a kid that I had a talent for brewing beer, because I never should have been brewing beer as a kid. But I found out through attention to detail and liking the science and liking the story and the backing, I was able to make beers that I had never had before. I always made my own stuff. And I loved making it. I loved the product that came out of it. My friends really enjoyed it too. And as I got involved in the community, I'd worked festivals and started meeting the representatives from this community and realized that this was an industry where the people on black and white were competitors, but they were actually a real rich community, and they were just as much a community with each other as they were with the consumers as well. And I was like, this is great. Everyone, it's like a utopia, and people from all walks of life can walk around from all sorts of different socioeconomic standards and age, and you can say, do you like craft beer too? And they're like, yeah, they will immediately go together and start conversing. I've seen it happen tons of times. It's a bonding agent, just like any sort of passion that people could share. And I realized shortly after, right around that time frame, that was my dream. That was everything I was looking for, was to be in a craft beer. And it literally became my dream. I looked at brewing craft beer as my ability to fly. I looked at it in the same light as I looked at all those fantastic things I thought of as a kid that I knew couldn't actually happen. It was that important to me. Lucky for me, I found that out right before I got my degree in physiology. So I did not have the means or the time to actually pick up and go to school in either Chicago or California and get a brewer's degree. And honestly, I didn't have the guts to tell mom and dad, like, you know that whole college thing that I just did and got a degree in? I'm gonna just throw it away and go make some beer. No, it definitely doesn't go over well when mom and dad don't drink. So. But I still had that passion and that drive with it, even though I was working in the medical industry. But the thing that made it different is I held it in the same light as any kid would hold a fantasy. But I kept some of my adult logic. I'm saying that there has to be some pathway to get to this. It's not a traditional pathway, but it's got to be there. And I kept part of that childlike hope and blind faith that it could happen. And I said, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't have the money to get up and go to a school, for brewing and whatnot. I certainly don't have the time if I need to, work in the current job that I have. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to get out. I'm going to brew every chance I get. I'm going to talk to every single person that knows more than me, which when you first get into craft beer, every craft beer person knows more than you about it. And I'm going to work my butt off for free until I get in. I didn't care if I was going to be 45 years old, if I was going to get in the beer industry at that point. I was going to get in there. And I was going to use every avenue that I could find to get through. I worked festivals, not just attended festivals. I worked festivals. I hosted dinners. I hosted pairings. I hosted tastings. I hosted release parties for new breweries that were coming into the area. And I got involved in the community that became the Charlotte Craft Beer Rise. And when I started getting into craft beer, the Charlotte area was just starting to kind of cusp the acceptance of what craft beer was. And I got to sit there and explain to people why this beer tastes like sweet tarts, or why this beer tastes like it's got chocolate fudge in it and whatnot, and the whole gambit of everything in between it. So I got to meet amazing people. When I moved to Charlotte, I had one friend that I knew before coming to Charlotte that was my roommate that I moved into. And the hundreds of friends I have now are all through the craft beer community. So I got immersed in there. And when I wasn't traveling around the country doing festivals and working for charities or breweries that were kind enough to let me in, I was out at restaurants, bars, trying to mingle with the managers, see what's pouring on tap, see what everyone else there was drinking. And more than likely, if you were in the craft beer community, you were going to find one of your friends from one of the home brewers that you happen to know, or someone that you had conversed about the craft beer experience with beforehand. So I always would go around in my free time and try to get deeper into the system. And that led me to meeting a wonderful couple named Todd and Susie Ford at a local watering hole. And I was sitting at the bar by myself, and I overheard Todd say the word hops. And I rudely jumped right into the conversation. And I was like, hey, you must homebrew. I do too. What are you doing? And Todd had been brewing for longer than I had been able to drive. And so he's like, well, this is my wife, Susie. And I just rudely talked to them and brought them out of their conversation for a little while. But we had great conversation about craft beer. And we both shared a love for kind of West Coast style beer and stuff that we didn't see a huge amount of here locally in Charlotte and also in the state in general, because it's still an emerging craft beer network. And that was pretty much it for the time being from there. I said, sorry I interrupted you guys, thanks for the talk, and I'll see you later. And I saw them a couple of times on and off after that point. But basically what I did not know is that Todd and Susie had basically started the ball rolling with making this little thing called No Doubt Brewing Company. And I said, well, that's great. If you need any help promoting it for an event, let me know. I'll help promote it. And my name kept cycling over to them as a potential brewer because I was obviously energetic about it. I was obsessed with it. Spent every free moment I had, working in craft beer. And I brewed the same stuff that Todd and Susie liked and that Todd was brewing as well. So a few months after meeting them, they sat me down and they said, would you like to be our brewer? And of course I screamed yes very loudly, and I literally received my dream job after about 6 years of promoting and working and brewing constantly, brewing weekly, in fact. And I sat there and I was like, this is it. I've got it. Now I've got to earn it. That's what I looked like Monday through Friday when I met Todd and Susie up and they asked me to be their head brewer. Todd for the business occasion and everything. And then that's what I upgraded to when I went in with them. And now most people don't think that'd be an upgrade, but that was an upgrade for me. I'm standing in our floor, about waist deep. In that bar I'm using to pry out our 1946 plumbing. And I'm not smiling in the picture because it smells as awesome as 1946 plumbing resurfacing as you would imagine it would be. But inside I was smiling because every time we threw a sledgehammer, every time we knocked a wall down, or every time I had to dive into really old sewage, everything along the way was going, this is getting closer to the dream. This is closer to brewing beer. And that drove me to do any messy job. No matter what we had to do to build out that place, I was willing to do it. And it was just another step closer to getting that dream job that I had, because it was handed to me, after making good connections. So there was luck involved. But I wanted to earn the right to be able to work at that location. And after we opened up, that's basically what it looked like when I was describing the yesterday brewing. That is actually sweat around me. That's Todd being real proud of his choice, I guess, right there. That was one of our earlier batches, actually. But that is how I feel inside when we brew. Every one of the brewers at NODA, that's how we feel when we're up there and we're creating something. We get to go to work early, or I've slept at the brewery many times, and wake up, or just don't go to sleep at all, and be like, what are we going to create? How can we express ourselves some more? And then we get to break down and work the science out, work the math, and then go and physically labor over this thing that we've created and is an artistic expression of us. Josh was just talking about self-expression. That's what we were doing. We're putting ourselves into this product. And then we get to go out and talk to you people about it and get that social interaction. So it was everything that I wanted in a job. So that's why it was my dream job. The reason why it was my dream is for the same reason why I've had any success in this industry and why NODA has had success, in my opinion, so far, is that we all understand the concept of what craft is. A lot of people say, what is craft beer? What makes it different than macro beer, et cetera? And a lot of people start breaking down the numbers and say, oh, it's about this amount of gain over here. It's not about that. And everybody that drinks craft beer in this audience will probably agree with me. In my mind, what makes craft beer, what makes anything craft, is the fact that it's not dependent on how many gallons you make a year. It's not dependent on how many states you're available in. It doesn't matter how long you've been around. It doesn't matter how many employees you have. What makes craft beer important is that every sip you have of craft beer, you can taste the full intent, history, and purpose behind the people that made it and pushed it to you. That's what has, thank you. That's what we do with every batch that we do. And that's what makes craft in anything, is self-expression. Just like Josh says, we may never meet. I hope I do get to meet many of you, but we may never actually talk face to face. But if you go and you drink a NODA beer, you're drinking part of me. We're having a conversation. You're drinking part of Todd. Don't get too dirty on that idea, okay? It's another way of communicating. You have your appearance, you have the way you look, you have what people can see and ingest in you. You have what you say and what you do to be your personality that people can intake. You can intake us in a different way because we put all of us into that product. When we hire people at NOTA, we look at how well do they fit with our group as one of the most predominant issues when they apply with us. Because if they don't fit with our team, they don't do any furthering of us expressing ourselves in our product. So it's all about self-expression. And that embodiment is what made craft beer my dream, is that craft beer is my vehicle of myself into being experienced in the wider set of community. That is what got us to this point. That's Todd and I at the Great American Beer Festival, Denver, Colorado. It's basically the Oscars of beer, if you didn't know that. We were 11 and a half months old right there, and that's the silver medal for the Robust Porter that we won for our Coco Loco. So, thank you. The moment when we won that, it was literally all the digging and all the sludging and even all the tastings. Before I ever knew Todd and Susie, it was like an end-of-life experience. It all came rushing through, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience for us. And that's basically what has led me to go in every single day, day in and day out, is the idea that we are using craft beer as a vehicle to express ourselves. So I wanted to close really quickly with a story that kind of relates back to the idea of community in craft beer and the idea of being inspired and just go ahead and seizing a dream and running with it. When I did my travels around the country, doing different events and whatnot, there's people that are basically like idols or beer celebrities in the beer world, just like there's celebrities of sports, there's celebrities in every industry. You know, it's like, oh, there's that guy, he did such and such. My first idol in the beer industry was Sam Calagione, and he was really the first person that got me intertwined in the concept of creating something outside the box, really expressing yourself, and that's what caused me to start brewing beer. And I had gotten the chance to meet Sam multiple times, and gotten to work with him a couple times as well. And when I got asked to do TEDx here, I was really honored that to be offered, obviously, to be here and whatnot amongst all the speakers. But also, I found out that Sam himself was a TEDx speaker. And I was like, oh my gosh, and he was one of the only brewery reps that had actually been a TEDx speaker. So I was like, I'm part of a short list with my idol, which was really great. So back in 2010, I gotta hurry up, I'm sorry. Back in 2010, I got a chance to work with Sam at a long festival. And to thank me, he basically sent a package that said a thank you letter in it, and also gave me a hat, a bottle opener, and he also gave me a bottle of my favorite beer that they do. I told him it was my favorite beer, and it was called Old School. It's a 15% alcohol barley wine with figs and dates in it. It's fantastic. And he sent me one from his own personal cellar, already vintage in 2006. So I freaked out. And I called my roommate, who was at the time, who was Charles. I was like, Charles, get downstairs. Sam gave me a package. And so he comes running down the stairs. It was like Sammy Claus had come to us. And I was like, you're witness to this. I wrote from Sam on it. I was like, you're witness to this. I'm not opening this bottle until either it is 10 years old in 2016, or I get my dream job as a brewer at a brewery. And on October 29th, 2011, we opened NOTA, and I and my good friend Brian Mister, who now works with us, videotaped a response to Sam, thanking him for the beer, thanking him for the inspiration, poured the beer and toasted him, and it was the best beer I ever had. And 2 days after that post got sent out, I got another thank you letter from Sam, and I got another bottle of it as well. So I felt it only right that since we are now part of a short list of these TEDx speakers, that I split my favorite beer from them with you guys, but I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Todd and Susie. So Todd and Susie, come up and drink with me. Couldn't be here without my parents either. They're here in the audience. I know, that's what I do. But cheers, and thank you guys so much for giving me the time to talk to all of you guys about my life and some important parts of it, and obviously the industry that I'm extremely lucky and fortunate to be a part of. Do yourself a favor and seek out those that use self-expression and use their passion and their vehicle as their vehicle to do their craft and be craft. Find your own vehicle and set it to your own dream. So cheers. Thank you guys.